All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the real FinOps for AI sessions. I'm just kidding. My name is Eric Lam. I'm actually very excited about these sessions. These breakout sessions that we heard in the past 2 days throughout the conference. How do we leverage FinOps for AI, right? So we will spend the majority of the time as we think about FinOps and AI. I think this is a very exciting topic. We'll share with you, especially from the panel here that we have from CME, from SAP, and from Wayfair, on how they're thinking about that from two different perspectives, right? One from the finance leadership, and second from the technical engineering perspective. But at the same time, Google has been in the AI journey for a long time. And even, matter of fact, 2 years ago, when we were thinking about how do we think about 2 steps ahead for our customers and partners, we are really deciding, okay, what should we do to help customers on this AI journey? So we have developed an approach and a framework on how we think about this. So I'll be talking about that aspect as well. And before we go further, I will do a quick introduction for the panel here as well. And by the way, I'm also joined by my colleagues, Bruce Warner and Pathik Sharma, who will be introducing themselves as they go on stage. Maybe hand it to Leslie.
Great. Good afternoon. My name is Leslie Nolan. It's a pleasure to have so many of you in the room. I have been a member, part of the CME group for about 13 years. We signed our cloud partnership with Google back in 2021, which is really when our FinOps journey started. We had great advice from some very close partners and friends that said, get your FinOps practice going from the very beginning. And about that time, I was asked to lead a group from a very traditional finance background. And so I really look forward to sharing what we're doing from an AI perspective. And my esteemed colleagues here, go ahead.
Great. Hi, I'm Brent Eubanks with Wayfair. I'm the FinOps Cloud Architect. So heading up the strategic vision. I work in the strategic operations and finance. So we're kind of a small team that oversees all the other departments. And the goal for us is leveraging AI where we can for different use cases from different value points, but also building a FinOps product. And how can we use AI for FinOps? But then how are we doing FinOps for AI? And we're trying to lead that. So I'm also leading the FinOps AI working group, and we're publishing the output of some of these findings. So we're going to recap some of that today, but really the value piece is what's coming in the last paper. So that might be published later in Q3, early Q4.
Good afternoon. My name is Wallace. I'm from SAP. I'm a VP of Cloud Engineering. We've been building software for the cloud for the last decade. And we recently launched a big effort to Gen AI enable all of our business applications and services. So I lead the FinOps engineering group as part of our product organization. Since we deliver software in the cloud for our end customers, so my team sits at the bottom of the delivery stack. We build infrastructure services to power our software that we deliver out to our customers. So in particular, I lead my team to build FinOps services, best practices to all of our product groups, and we try to make our cloud delivery and our cloud engineering practices more efficient, more cost efficient. And this Gen AI wave is absolutely adding a lot of both benefits and cost implications to what we do. And this is some great partnership. We're working with Google as we speak. Google helped us build a pretty interesting TCO model for enabling and identifying the potential cost for building Gen AI implementations in our journey. I'll be happy to share some of those more details in this talk.
Thanks, Wallace. Thanks, Leslie, and thanks, Brent. So let's dive into the first topic on how to maximize AI investment from the more of the finance leadership persona. but I will share with you some of the frameworks that we are approaching this. As you know, many of the industry research and reports, matter of fact, less than 10% of generative AI use cases are actually deployed into production today. And the reasons why is primarily due to three key factors. One, certainly is about the data. Two, is about security. And three, is the cost, right? You hear again and again throughout the last 2 days, the concern regarding how Gen AI is going to spike up my cloud spend. The reality is that less than 10% of those Gen AI use cases are actually in production, right? So how do we actually create an approach to help facilitate and streamline Gen AI use cases that have been shared by the business, by the product, and then help the organizations move and propel that forward from pilot through innovations to maximize business value. So as Google, we have been working with many customers on this. We laid out a three-phase approach. The first phase is what we call the pilot generative AI use cases phase. And it was discussed, matter of fact, on day one, right, where Jen Hayes shared during the panel discussion with our VPs on experimentations. How do you enable your organizations to experiment with generative AI use cases in a more financial governance process? Here you go, right? In the pilot phase, what you have to do is really brainstorm all these ideas, right? And set up a sandbox environment that has fixed time and fixed costs, and in a way that the developers, the product managers, the business leaders have a clear sense of what they're looking to achieve as part of initial pilot phase to determine whether those Gen AI use cases are feasible or desirable. Once you have done that and proven that out, you move into the MVP phase. And this is critical. The MVP phase, and this is a matter of fact where we see many of customers are currently in today with generative AI use cases are stuck in MVP. They iterate through this MVP process from building, designing, and this is where you actually design what your architecture framework might look like, which LLM model to use, how you're going to price this out, how you're going to quantify the actual cost and forecasts. So the MVP phase will become a very important phase to move that into production. So in order to facilitate this process, we create a cloud front door for generative AI. And I'll deep dive into what that is. And once you go through that front door process, obviously, then you can then promote that into production. So the first step in this front door process is to assess your generative AI readiness across 5 core competency areas. The first area is Gen AI enablement. Do you have the right training and skill set within your organizations to understand the various generative AI models, the AI agents, and the various services that are available today within the cloud service provider or open source? Second, cost allocations. It's not just the LM model itself. You have to think about the total cost of ownership of your generative AI use cases. The auxiliary services that are around it, from the actual model, the cost breakdown of that, and also how are you thinking about the ML ops aspect of it to deploy your generative AI use cases into production, and whether you do it manually or fully automated. That is a very critical piece to move that into production. The third piece is model optimizations, right? So as you going through this MVP phase, which is phase 2 in the previous slide, you got to iterate through that. You're going to learn new things, right? Whether this large language model better fit for you. Because one of our, Pravir Gupta, our VP, also shared, right? Generative AI solve a very specific problem. You need to be able to understand generative AI will not be able to solve every single problem, right? And able to apply that to particular use cases that can solve it will be very important. And then the fourth one is pricing model. Understand the various pricing model that the cloud service provider has and other vendors, and able to incorporate that, right? Because whether you're going to need CPUs, GPUs, TPUs, and whatnot, and what the cost implication for us to train and so forth is one key critical factor. And finally, how are you to report on your generative AI use cases, the value being generated, and so forth. So that's the first step in the framework on assessing your generative AI readiness. Once you have done that, then you go through this cloud front door process. Focus on two primary facets, financial viability and Gen AI suitability. In the financial viability aspect is, first, you need to do the TCO analysis, total cost of ownership, that perhaps encompass model tuning, serving costs, training costs, support costs. First slide, I'll break it down into one of those costs. The second area is value analysis, right? And matter of fact, as we've done a lot of these generative AI use cases and business case, it's primarily come down to 4 key factors that we see many customers anchored their value case for generative AI. 1 is operational efficiencies. 2, revenue generations. 3, customer satisfactions, customer experience enhancement, and so forth. And the 4th area is market differentiations. Are you bringing your generative AI use cases to differentiate in your marketplace? And then certainly, you have to also assess from your technical readiness, operation readiness, security readiness, and compliance. All that needs to be considered before you go through this process. And as we have been working in many of these use cases, we actually created a rubrics to help customers assess and prioritize this based on the rubrics that we created and the framework on this. So once you have that rubrics and the scorecard based on these dimensions, then you want to plot it in a 2x2, right, and validate that by impact versus effort. Perhaps as a result of this framework, you'll be able to find and identify some of those use cases might be easy wins, and some might be much more effort, but those are the big bets. And the one that needs, perhaps you need to revisit your business case as well. So these are the 3-step process that we have iterated through time and time again as you think about how to prioritize your generative AI investment. Certainly, you have to tailor to your organization needs, how you go through this, but this is a good start that I hope you guys can take away from this. Once you have that process in place, then let's double click into how do you think about building a TCO model for the large language modeling. There are 3 types of LM, right? The first is the foundation model. And large customer, or the large cloud service provider like Google, right? We build this foundation model for customers to leverage. And these are just a list of some cost structure and components of LM. It's not comprehensive for sure. But as you think about this, when you build a foundation model, you have to consider model serving costs, the training and tuning costs, the cloud hosting costs, the adaptive layer of the storage costs when you're using RAG and others, the application layer and setup costs, and also the operation support costs as well. Out of these 7 sort of key cost components, which one do you think are the highest costs? It's training and tuning costs, right? So a lot of customers would need, in order to do this and build a foundation model, they need to acquire a lot of CPUs, GPUs, and TPUs. Why do that? What we see with customers in enterprise world is use a tune model, right? You want to augment the LM, which is frozen, with your own adaptive layers, with your own data set, so you can tune it to your needs and your specific business requirements. When you use a tune model, the cost component will be the model serving cost. There might be some tuning costs, right? But then majority of that other costs, might be where you can leverage, cloud service provider like Google because we've been training our own model for a long, long time. And finally, the third variation of this is out of the box, right? Basically, it's just a model serving cost through APIs and so forth. Once you determine which of the LM model that you want to be leveraged, then you can then assess and estimate what's the total input number of characters. And this all depends on the LM and the services that you're leveraging, right? The example I give here is, from Google, is Palm Text Bison, because it's text generated and so forth, so you need to consider what's the total input character for your use case, what's the total output characters, what's the total prompt characters, and so forth. The way we price our customers on this is per 1,000 characters. Other vendors will be charging you per token, right? So you have to consider that and understand the variations, and hence going back to understanding the pricing model. This is just a start, right? And as I mentioned earlier, when you think about generative AI total cost of ownership, the LLM component is just one piece of this, right? You have to also factor in the ML ops, the deployment. You have to think about your validations of the model, the training of your model, and then also thinking about how you continue to tune it. So all those costs need to be factored in as you build your generative AI use case. So with that said, now I hand over to my colleague, Bruce Warner, to have, how do you think about bringing all this concept and framework into reality? Bruce?
All right, thank you very much, Eric. So I'm Bruce Warner, one of the FinOps practice leads in our Google FinOps practice. I also lead an adjacent practice that we call the Office of the CFO, where we work with finance leaders on considerations around how cloud adoption will impact the P&L, OpEx, CapEx, cloud capitalization strategies, and similar topics. So we're going to talk from several different personas. We're going to start with the finance persona with Leslie. Now, Leslie, as an executive finance director, you carry a fiduciary responsibility. So can you explain to the audience really what that means, particularly in the context of investing in technology?
Absolutely. So Bruce and I are dear-hearted, right, when it comes to what matters to the CFO, what we care about are costs and expenses. But what Bruce is referring to is, right, when you're in the finance or even within cloud in general, our jobs are to maximize shareholder value. How do you maximize shareholder value is you're managing costs, you're promoting new revenue, new investments, different things. So when we think about a new technology and everything Eric just walked through, I'm like, oh, that sounds real expensive. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, right? I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a lot of work. How do we figure this out? These guys see a new shiny toy. I'm like, oh, like how are we gonna do this? But that being said, right, AI does not seem to be going anywhere. Right, and so I have a job as a lead within CME running our FinOps practice to ensure we are building the right type of governance, the right models to support my partners, because for our FinOps practice to be successful and for me to be able to deliver the value that I need to for the CFO and for CME generally, I have to have partnership with technology. And this is a technology solution that is coming. We all have a duty to make sure we understand it and what it means. Clearly, I'm going to be much more focused on the cost side than probably the data and security that Eric just went through. But it is all three pieces have to be at the table, and we all have to be preparing for what they mean.
Thank you, Leslie. So there's been a lot of rapid technology change with generative AI in the last 18 months. Seems like every minute there's new capabilities being discussed. So when that really first burst on the scene, what was some of your first reactions?
Yeah, so I would say I'll repeat some of the things I've heard. Bigger than the internet. And I was like, what does that even mean? Like, how could something be bigger than the internet? But sure. Again, not a technology person, traditional finance, okay? I've also heard AI's been here for 20 years. What's the big deal? What are you even talking about? Why are people all of a sudden talking about, right? And that's where Gen AI is different than AI, or my colleagues up here would probably tell me. But from my perspective, and you guys may like blush at this, to me it's just another capability. It's another way of doing new things in the cloud, creating automation, creating efficiency, right? How is that any different than working in the cloud? How is that any different than many of the different technological advances we've seen from a long time? So, and also, I guess I should say, so for those who are unaware, CME Group, right, is a derivatives exchange. We are a pretty traditional financial services right? We are rarely, unless it's around like matching technology, like driving the forefront of technology. We watch it, but we aren't, I would say, maybe in the retail space, like Wayfair, right, where it's probably critically important that they have a solution. They're embedding it in how we all, like I love it, right? I can go on the website and Wayfair tells me now what else I should buy. It's fantastic. Or they know that I need help assembling it, right? Like all of that, but it's not quite there yet for financial services, to be very honest, Bruce. But yeah, I mean, so we're watching, kind of with a little bit of fear, right? And then the other big piece for us is data, right? I mean, data for all of us, but customer data, but what allows people to come to the exchange is we're protecting that match, right? We're protecting that data. So for us, there is a little bit of fear, if I could also say, as we think about like what this technology means. And that fear is just because we don't understand it, to be very honest. Like, I've heard Eric give this presentation, I can't even, at least a half a dozen times. I'm still never quite sure all the things he's talking about. Now, shame on me for not fully appreciating all of it, but like that creates fear, because when we don't understand it, you know, your natural reaction, at least mine, is to kind of cower and back off and, you know, try to learn as much as you can. But we also have, all of our companies and all of us have an awful lot going on. So Gen AI is just adding to the chaos that many of us are experiencing if you're in the midst of a large app migration like we are.
So thank you for your candid response, Leslie. So in this world of chaos, how do you think about bringing control and structure to your investment decisions? So for example, have you built a business case approach to how you're thinking about investing in generative AI?
Yeah, so unfortunately we haven't yet, because as my friends up here will talk about, right, technology is super excited about this tool and this capability. And so right now at CME, we have a lot of interest, which is great, right? And so the feeling is we want people to be excited. We want people to be trying it out. So I would say that discipline of having a front door, having a prioritization process, thinking about the financial framework is not there. Now, I would also say that we are not, so we've been working on a knowledge search capability, and we've also been working on a chatbot, right? So those are kind of, neither one of them are in a production, neither one of them use external data. There's small user groups, like at CME, we're about 3,500 employees. So we're talking about anywhere from 60 to 100 people have access and are testing it and testing the capabilities. But where we need to go is, to your point, is bringing back, we have our front door process for any new investment, for any new technology, right? And what's hard for me, and I'm sure, again, my friends up here will help me understand it, I don't view this any different, and please, than using PubSub. Or using, it's just another platform and a capability, BigQuery, apologies, I don't know AWS and Microsoft quite as well, but you know, to me, it's just another service to add to your cloud capabilities. So there is a little bit of frustration, I will say, on my side at CME, that we don't have the discipline yet. We do, though, have a risk committee and a charter, which does have our cyber team, so as well as our legal team, because where we are very focused right now is data and security, as Eric pointed out, and cost right now is kind of secondary, that business case, that prioritization. But what I will tell you, what we learned in both of these use cases is what happened is we weren't following the same automation and using the cloud in the way in which we should have. So all of a sudden, we now have these use cases in a sandbox, and they can't scale into anything more than what they are, because we didn't use the cloud process capabilities we have, because we were so excited. So my hope is this, and I was at it, I actually participated in my first AI risk committee, so cost is now at the table, so we'll call that a win. But yeah, getting that business case, that prioritization going, just like any other investment, and that's my responsibility, right? I have to have a voice at the table that says, look guys, I'll support you, but we all have one cloud budget, we have expense guidance, it's gotta fit in. I wanna support all the new great ideas. And then I would also say the other challenge we really have with a lot of the business cases is, for the most part, it's an efficiency. Now, when we talk about efficiencies, that normally is human capital, right? Now, I am in no way, shape, or form do I believe Gen AI is gonna come in, like I participated in all those sessions and says all of a sudden jobs could be replaced. I don't think we're there, to be very candid. Happy to debate people on that topic. I know it's very sensitive. But as a finance person, if you're coming to me with a use case, and as Eric said, you have to know your success criteria, but I would take a step further. What is your outcome? And if your outcome is not clearly defined, we shouldn't worry about what the solution is. Gen AI could be the solution, but what is your use case? What are you trying to solve for? What is that outcome? And if it fails the outcome, right, the whole product model and everything we're trying to do is you're supposed to start over. And that discipline is also not there. But that is the challenge we have with some of these use cases is we ran, unfortunately, and now we got to pull back, and we got to figure out how to do that.
Well, thank you for that, Leslie. So now we're going to change perspective a little bit and talk about the engineering persona perspective. And Wallace, I'd like to start with you. So as a software business, right, where you're both a consumer of this technology and you're trying to embed it into features, right? It takes a little different perspective. Tell us a little bit more about how you're thinking about generative AI.
Sure. When we start about Gen AI as a technology company, of course, we bet on, Gen AI is a big trend, and we think this is something that our customers will appreciate, just like the whole industry is betting the Gen AI future, and we're in it. So from you're welcome. So from that perspective, we are making already a business investment into Gen AI into our products. Not necessarily looking at it as a risk, or as we look at it more as an opportunity, and how to add business value to our customers. For instance, we're enabling a lot of our business services with Gen AI capabilities without charging our customers any more money, right? And this is because we truly believe this will make our customers' life easier, more satisfactory, and all the benefits that will bring to our customers. So from that point of view, my role in the product organization is really to enable my product team, my engineering organization, to be able to deliver Gen AI capabilities in the most efficient way possible. And of course, we didn't start by setting up some, front door or governance process simply because the business wants to move really, really fast, adopting this technology. But of course, we are conscious about the cost implications of, especially when we have a GPU run for, all the expensive hardwares out there. We're conscious about how much this will cost us. And to a lot of business units or application teams, this is probably not their top concern, but we are at the infrastructure layer. We're looking at this very carefully and very closely, and that's why we're working with Google to establish this front door process and define this cost model that can help our application, our business teams to really discover, identify the cost elements. I mean, to me, this technology is fantastic, and it is complex though. It does have many components, right? All the way from the models, the underlying data, the augmenting data, the whole inference game that you have to operationalize it, provisioning to our customers. There's a whole lot of moving pieces in this game. I look at it as a complex architecture, reference architecture that we just have to treat it similarly like how we treat our standard web app tier application architecture, and we plug in our cost model and we go from there.
All right, thank you, Wallace. So Brent, as a online retailer, right, you're in a little bit of a different business model. How do you think about investment in generative AI?
Yeah, it's a great topic. We have innovation that's like volunteer. So like our CTO, she's very well known. She attends a lot of leading edge stuff. So she's really setting a bar as executive leadership of volunteer, and then that drives the directors and others in the company. So the folks in our Slack channel or the Gen AI Council, it's volunteer. So if you're personally involved in it, if you're identifying the technology on a personal basis for other reasons, or you're trying to make yourself more productive, or you're leading a team and you're trying to deliver more features faster and amplify your own team's output, what we're doing is we're really trying to identify those like external items and then the internal items and value. And so when you're trying to get a very specific user story, the thing that we're doing as a retailer is in the technology org, there's investments, and as those investments come in, there's the impact versus effort. But you got to do a multi-dimensional analysis. So everyone should be playing, right? So you as a Wayfarian, you should be figuring out where this will apply. It's kind of like math or English. You're going to have math, English, and AI. It's going to be everywhere. So it's not like it's a thing, right? And so everyone is responsible for the persona groups. And so now we get an input in this strategic finance and ops role. Every department is now initiating ideas. And so whether it's office extensions, like Gemini Workspaces, whether it's transcripts, summarize my email, calendars, keep me on track, Slack bots, and then on the e-commerce side, like, hey, take a picture of my living room, and I want it to redecorate it with the Wayfair product catalog, right? And so it's a great use case, but we're not able to like fully optimize it because it's so expensive. If it would cost 30 times cheaper, you guys would probably all know about it today, right? And so these are the things that everyone's experimenting, and then as it gets into that, hey, we got to go ask for money together, my role in the FinOps Gen AI Council is we're going to co-build the program so that we don't over-forecast or under-forecast. We're going to bring this big spend in together, and there was a very quick and efficient investment rubric that we're asking you to follow, and we know we're guessing, but at least we know we're not going to be off by 20x. So that's kind of the role we're playing as FinOps.
So I could probably stay up here for the next hour asking you guys questions because I find this fascinating, but I think Pathik would kill me. So we're going to move on, and Pathik's going to give us a little bit of taste of how we're using some of this technology. So Pathik?
Thank you, Bruce. That kill me was figuratively, so just, so that I don't get into trouble. So I think we spend some time, and thank you for the kind of showcasing the how AI plays a role in terms of like how do you apply FinOps frameworks for AI. Now I guess we can look at the other side of the coin, which is how AI can accelerate some of the FinOps capabilities. And that's certainly very exciting. Leslie and I were having a conversation the other day, and one of the things Leslie mentioned was like, hey, I should be able to talk to my data without asking my director or FinOps pod to be able to create charts and graphs and write complex SQL statements. And understanding the complex billing schema and trying to join it with my forecasting data. Right? Like all of that is very complicated. How can I directly just speak with my data and make those decisions on my own? And can AI actually solve for that? I think we would say like there is a lot of opportunity in this area, and we are one step closer to that. And I think we can definitely put some light on that as part of the next 10 minutes.
But before you do that, we just need to run it through the cost rubric to make sure we know how much that's going to cost me. Because you said it would be very expensive for me to do.
Absolutely. And we will follow the same framework that Eric just walked us through.
That's all I ask. The framework is followed.
So we are applying FinOps for AI for FinOps. All right, so full circle, inception, something like that. All right. So my name is Pathik Sharma. I lead cost optimization in a FinOps consulting practice, part of the same team here. So let's actually walk us through there. So I think when we think about how AI can be applied for FinOps use cases, we were thinking about, what are some of the thoughtful ways where customers are already using FinOps capabilities and just build on top of it rather than doing something differently. So we hear customers already have access to things like billing data or utilization data or their business drivers and things of those nature. And we like to think that you have a visualization layer on top of it. Now again, we are Google, so we have Looker here in this place. But essentially, how can you apply statistical models like machine learning to be able to do trend-based forecasting or driver-based forecasting or catch anomalies or things of those nature? How can we apply something like Gemini, for example, as an LLM to enable some of those use cases? And I think in having conversations with multiple customers, we see that there are some common use cases like reporting, cost optimization, forecasting, where AI can be applied easily. So we have about 3 examples that I wanted to kind of walk through, and I will also look for some reactions from the panelists there as well. The first one is kind of the Explore Assistant, which is what Leslie you were kind of asking for, is having a AI assistant having conversations with your data, right? So in this case, what's happening is an app team who is already using generative AI use cases across multiple different applications deployed across multiple different countries. And now the team wants to understand, hey, what's my generative AI cost look like today in production? What does it look like for different countries? Can you summarize this information for me? So you can actually, you're using the same data, but essentially AI is helping you get to those insights and data faster. Instead of spending hours and hours of cycles in terms of combining the data, trying to understand the schema and things of those nature. Right? So that's one of the use cases that we have seen kind of work well.
Yeah, just to emphasize the key message here, like I wasn't getting staff backfill at the last company, a couple of people left, there was no more recs, and they're like, hey, you still got to build all the same stuff. And then what I found out was in building the FinOps product was we hired a lot of knowledge workers in the team to build SQL, to produce charts. And so a lot of the folks weren't coming to us because they knew we were overloaded. So now what this allows you to do is you will get data. And a lot of people say, oh, well, I don't use AI because it doesn't do good data analytics, right? So what you're seeing here is go to your already trusted data provider. They're adding AI. And so that's what they're saying here is this is not a language model where you're trying to make a fish climb a tree and do data analytics from words. This is, you're going to a data-centric SQL data source. They're adding conversational interface, right? And so if you could describe the report you wanted, we still had to do that back and forth and iterate over a couple weeks. And then you would get a report and you'd be like, no, the data's not right. Or I want it on a pie chart. 6 weeks later, you get the one chart widget. Now you get it in like 4 seconds, right? And so we can pre-build these buttons with like a Mad Lib. So I don't have to build everything. Now you can start exploring around and say, oh, well, tell me the story of the bar chart, right? And that was a lot of the other work we did. So that's what we're talking about here is use the right type of AI for the user story against it. And this is where you're seeing AI trickle in as a conversational layer that gets business users adopting it and not pigeonholing report creation and data exploration as a team dependency of a data science or a FinOps report builder.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Brent, for the time to value. So another use case is kind of along the lines we've heard about, like sometimes we send out the dashboards to the app teams and app teams like, what do I do? Is this something that I should be understanding, learning? What's my takeaway? Should I be taking any action from that? So that's where the summarization kind of comes into the play, right? Where AI is understanding the large amount of structured data that is fed into it to be able to summarize in a more simplified manner that, hey, this is what this chart or graphic is explaining. These are the insights derived from there. And then here are the 3 things or 3 key takeaways that you can actually take from that. And I think the use cases here is, it could be things like hey, how am I doing from my budgeting and forecasting perspective? Do I need to course correct sooner? Do I need to ask my team to be optimizing further, or are my migrations being delayed? So these are some of the questions that can be answered in this space.
This really helps with your education, right? So a lot of the conversation over the last couple of days is how do you educate, how do you bring that cultural change? Even if it's 20% right, at least it started, and it gives an app owner who may not know what questions to even ask, it's giving them something to start with, and that's a powerful tool as we're trying to get, right, the team sport, the team built up, that we're all doing the same. I mean, this is exactly what people are looking for.
Thanks, Leslie. The next one, I know a lot of people are very excited about is kind of being proactive and catching the anomalies rather than having that bill shock at the end of the month. And the idea here is, again, right, not asking Gemini or LLM models to identify anomalies for us, but rather using a statistical model that have been doing that consistently and accurately over decades, right? So something like Arima Plus, which is natively supported in BigQuery, or it could be any other regression model that you can use. But once the anomalies has been captured, we can actually ask Gemini to enlighten us, right? What was the root cause analysis based on the context of how I am using that GCP service or any cloud service? What are the best practices that I should be aware about? What are some of the educations that I can apply so that this can be prevented or avoided in future, and so on and so forth, right? Because not everyone is super knowledgeable about a specific cloud service when they're using it for the first time, and it's okay to make mistakes, right? So how can AI kind of give that friendly nudges and education snippets as we go along the way? So I think these are some of the avenues where we see that AI can be helpful in the existing kind of FinOps workflows. All right, I think with that said, I know a lot of customers have approached us in terms of FinOps being a continuous journey and discipline, and how can we partner together. So like from a Google Cloud perspective, our team basically help end-to-end, right, from creating the operating model to helping with the governance structure, building customized solutions using ML and AI. And thanks to the excellent panelists for being such amazing partners so that we can actually grow and go beyond the horizons to create something that can actually help FinOps practitioners at scale. I think with that said, I would like to thank Leslie, Brent, and Wallace for being amazing partners and sharing your inspiring story with us. You have a barcode here up on the screen. That's the AI and FinOps white paper that we published last year. So definitely go check out, have a read at that. It kind of goes into much details about the framework and different use cases where AI can be used in terms of your FinOps capabilities.
Let's give the panel a big round of applause. And with the permission of the panel, you can raise your hands. Can we just extend like an extra 5 minutes for some Q&A? Cool, appreciate that. So we got 2 or 3 questions. Who would like to ask the first question? I know there's someone out there. I will ask you to ask a question if you don't raise your hand. There we go. Brave individual. It's a catch box. I'm going to throw it just for fun.
What type of tools are you finding to help you manage this?
The question was about what tools?
Yes, sir.
So a lot of it is like, unfortunately, it's still G Sheets, but a lot of the work is inside of your data lake. There's little nuggets, and then in the AI area, it's trying to understand the ML platform and then the user stories so that you can understand the level of complexity. Some of it is just solved with like a Workspaces plugin. Some of it doesn't need AI at all, and you just got to kind of tell them that. The other ones are, you got to go experiment so that you can test the limits. The sophistication is kind of spread out all over from the working group folks. The tools are rapidly evolving, but on like a Google sense, there's the DIY with open source models, And then there's the Gemini models with the Vertex and the studios. And the last is your like code copilots. And so like Cody or code copilots or things like that. So that's really where we're seeing either a RAG workflow, customer support, summary, agent bot, or like internally to answer Slack and documents or code copilots. So those particular things, a lot of it's pulling from the Google catalog that we're using. I don't know about you guys.
I think this conference has a lot of talks and information on tools for Gen AI for FinOps. But if you look at tools for FinOps on Gen AI, there's really not a whole lot of differences. What the best practices you already know about in FinOps that you should apply, continue to apply to your Gen AI projects, your implementations, life cycles. But of course, you can also apply Gen AI capabilities, the large language models. We'll start to experiment in some of those to like exactly what Pathik just showed. That's actually the number one question from our finance, our controlling organization. They really wanted to know how to use our tools better. And Gen AI is really helping to democratize the whole tool landscape.
And in one of the presentations I was in, I also heard somebody make a comment that the average FinOps practice is using 3 to 4 plus tools. I would say a focus for us has been fewer tools, right? Because the challenge is every tool needs to be almost customized to a certain extent to what you need. Then you have integration points, you have multiple sets of data. So I would also caution, like what Wallace and Brent both said, think of Gen AI just as another capability as part of the tooling package you're already using and see if you could start there. Because I think the more tools you add, just the more complexity you're adding to your practice, and it just makes it that much harder for you to be able to push those insights down to the people to take the actions.
Got one question here.
Hi. Questions from an AI investment perspective. So I think you've said that you can help forecasting without not being 20x out, but then how do you validate your assumptions with so much unknown, and then how you look at risk in that environment?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I think when we look at the different user stories, there's still base components. And so when we have the compute, processing, storage, the model, there's one-time engineering costs with the tuning and training, and then there's the scale adoption curve. So as long as you can align the adoption with the model costs, then we can at least get close. And then based on your viable deployment options that will take it out of experiment into prod, then we have some existing unit economics or rates. And so if we do a paved path, now they don't have to create snowflakes for everybody. Now we can start to get to maybe 7 patterns. And so now we kind of have cost and logging metrics. So we can get some variance on what stuff's costing. So we can get enough info, and then we can bring in optimizations or not. And so that's really where we're trying to say, hey, great as an experiment, but we don't need to slow them down with trying to be really good at forecasting. It's very complex if you've ever tried to detail forecast. So that's what we're trying to do, is make it really simple. And then when they go to ask for money, at least we've got a few tactics to check off and say, have you thought about this or this that would do a 10x reduction? And if they can justify why they're going to be on the more expensive one, that's the reason we're going to bring in. And so I'm not trying to debate their engineering choices. I'm just clarifying the facts that we're both going to go ask for that money, and you're going to take money from somebody else or a staffing budget. So we want to be, we want to have a defensible quote when we go to the finance committee for approval.
And I'm going to take the last question here. I know there's more, but you are welcome to accost the panel after the session.
Thank you for the sharing. So I'm also thinking with Gen AI, what aspects of the FinOps role do you think will remain the same, and what do you think will change?
I think a lot of the stuff remain the same so far for us. What's going to change is the unknowns, because the whole Gen AI cost model is largely unproven, I would say. We've heard feedback from our engineering teams, such as, in the POC stage, you build a very good model to prove your POC works, but when you bring that to the production, the model stops working. It's a lot of those pitfalls or things that you really have to prove in real production at scale. So just stay vigilant and watch your cost anomaly. Use the Gen AI capabilities to watch those as you go. We will continue to discover new territories here.
Yeah, and I'll like to add to something what Wallace already mentioned. I think framework already talks about different personas that are part of the FinOps team. One of the additions would be a persona that interacts more with machine learning or more with data, right? It's not daunting as in creating your own models and have a PhD in a specific field of machine learning, but more along the lines of how do you make use of existing models that are already out there, right? So there's dozens of deep learning models or statistical models, regression models that are out there, but how do you really apply your data using those models, right? So there's, I think there would be addition of those personas within the FinOps team who apply more of those capabilities to the FinOps team. So again, job security, team growth.
And I think you can use what JR said yesterday, right? We can't always be running, right? So it's an ever-changing FinOps world that we operate in, framework. The practice is continuing to be defined, and AI is just the latest change. So we all have to think about, but if you look back at what the mission statement is or what the principles, none of those change with Gen AI. It's just another technology. You may have to change how you approach it from a cost perspective or an investment or how you manage it, but the same principles and the same personas are still there. So from my perspective, I would ask you to consider how you don't change your FinOps framework, but Gen AI just becomes a part of it. Because I think if you're gonna try to build something new, your FinOps practice will fall short because you're now focused on something else, or you don't give Gen AI enough attention to bring it in. So just my perspective.
And then one of the things that's personal hobby is these agents with tools. So as a AI chat, it's kind of single shot. I have a question, answer it. But now we have agents in crews. And so if we can build a digital agentic FinOps workforce for doing automated SKU analysis every day, what's overcharged or undercharged, triage anomalies for me. So I can now define a workflow Visio process, and I can allocate an agent in each step. And I can do a sequential or a hierarchical Crew AI, AutoGen, or Langflow, right? So now I can start to augment myself with 10 or 1,000 little digital FinOps task workers. So narrow task FinOps is opening up to produce SQL that maybe we had consultants do, or we didn't get to it because we had so many other things to build. Well, let's give it to there. Yeah, so how do we do jobs that humans can't or won't do to scale? Or how do we get to the B, C, D priorities when we only have enough staff to do A and B priorities, right? So we're amplifying the current team. It's not ready to replace anybody. I'm just able to get more done and stuff that people won't do or can't do because of scale or boredom or it's not the right fit, right? So that's kind of what I'm thinking about into the future.
Thank you, panel, and let's give them a warm round of applause.
Thanks for watching. Check out more FinOps X 2024 content on our YouTube channel on the 2024 playlist. Support our channel by liking, subscribing, clicking the notification bell, and by leaving comments and questions for our speakers. We appreciate your support.